I still remember the exact words my father said the day he fired me. "You're too emotional for leadership. Let Brandon take it from here. Focus on starting a family instead." It wasn't just a rejection, it was a slap from the very man who'd once bragged about how I coded my first app at 15. My name is Olivia Hart. I'm 28 years old, and until that day, I believed I was next in line to lead Hart Innovations, our family's crown jewel of a software empire in Seattle. I'd done everything right, graduated from MIT with a degree in computer science, spent years coding for top firms, and even built a machine learning model that got a shout-out from Forbes. But none of that mattered. Not when I was his daughter instead of his son. I should have seen it coming. The family dinners where my ideas were interesting, but Brandon's half-baked thoughts were brilliant. The meetings where I was asked to take notes while Brandon stumbled through architecture he barely understood. Still, I stayed. I thought hard work would prove my worth. I thought my bloodline would mean I had a voice. I was wrong. The day it happened, I was presenting a framework for real-time data processing that could have revolutionized our cloud platform. I was halfway through the deck when Leonard, sorry, my father, cut me off. He looked past me to Brandon, then said with a smile, "You'll be announcing the changes next quarter, son. Make us proud." I stood there, stunned, as the boardroom applauded. Applauded him. Not a single eye turned toward me. I confronted him after the meeting. Asked him why. He didn't sugarcoat it. "You're smart, Olivia, but our clients want a strong face up front. Brandon's a natural. You'd make an excellent wife someday." I don't remember leaving the office. I just remember sitting in my car, my hands on the wheel, and my entire future disintegrating like ash in the wind. I drove to the family estate. Packed my things. My mother offered a sympathetic look, but said nothing. That stung in a whole different way. She used to tell me I could be anything. Now she wouldn't even tell him he was wrong. I left with my laptop, 2 suitcases, and no plan. But I had one truth: if I was going to make my mark, it wouldn't be as Leonard Hart's daughter. It would be as Olivia Hart, on my own terms. I didn't speak to Brandon. What was there to say? He'd never lifted a finger to compete. Everything was handed to him. I used to help him with homework in college. I built the tools he took credit for in our early days at Hart Innovations. He always smiled at me like he was grateful. Turns out he was just biding his time until the keys were handed over. I got an Airbnb in Seattle for a few weeks while I scoured job boards, LinkedIn, startup sites, anything. My resume was strong, my portfolio stronger. But I didn't want to land just anywhere. I wanted to build. To grow. To prove, not to them, but to myself, that I was capable of building an empire that didn't require a family name. 2 weeks later, I saw a listing for Quantum Path. I'd heard the name whispered in engineering circles: cutting-edge AI work, partnerships with NASA, a culture of merit over legacy. I applied the same day, customized my cover letter, and sent it off with more desperation than I liked to admit. Marcus Lee, their lead developer, emailed me directly less than 24 hours later. "Your open-source contributions are impressive. Let's talk." We did. Twice. He grilled me harder than anyone had in years, and I loved it. I didn't want a free ride. I wanted a challenge. By the end of the week, I had an offer. I packed again, this time for Austin. No farewell party. No bridge left unburned. Just a quiet, determined goodbye to the city where I'd spent my whole life trying to prove something to a man who never saw me as an equal. The flight to Texas felt like a reset button. I stared out the window at the clouds below and imagined lines of code, algorithms, neural networks, things I could control. Things that made sense. Unlike my family. I stepped into Quantum Path's downtown Austin office the following Monday morning, dressed in a simple navy blazer and jeans. The air buzzed with the kind of creative chaos I hadn't realized I'd missed. Desks were arranged in clusters, whiteboards covered in sprawling architectural diagrams, and the hum of collaboration filled every corner. No suits, no smug airs, just brains and ambition. Marcus Lee met me at the entrance with a handshake that meant business. "Let me show you where we actually build the future," he said, grinning as he led me past teams deep in conversation about propulsion AI, robotics feedback loops, and modular simulation design. I was assigned to the Simulation Intelligence team, the heartbeat of Quantum Path's contract with NASA. Marcus didn't waste time. By my second day, I was knee-deep in legacy code, deciphering outdated architecture while sketching out ways to improve it. It felt alive. The kind of work that challenged every part of my brain, the kind of work I used to dream about when Heart Innovations relegated me to UI bug fixes because Brandon wanted to take the lead on core systems. Within the first 2 weeks, I rebuilt a laggy subroutine that had been frustrating engineers for months. A week later, I deployed a dynamic load balancing algorithm that reduced processing time on one of our core simulations by 43%. Word spread fast, people started swinging by my desk to ask how I'd done it. It was the first time in a long time that my skills were seen, appreciated, and, most importantly, respected. Marcus noticed too. "This is brilliant work," he said one afternoon, holding up a printout of my predictive runtime model. "You want to pitch the new framework at next month's partner review?" My eyebrows shot up. "You mean to NASA?" He nodded. "Why not? You built it." At heart, I would have been told to let Brandon present while I sat in the back, taking notes and correcting his terminology afterward. Here, it was different. No legacy. No gendered assumptions. Just performance. The days flew by in a blur of code reviews, team syncs, and long nights solving problems I genuinely cared about. We started getting attention from senior NASA engineers. Olivia Hart was mentioned in email threads I wasn't even part of yet. Marcus began giving me more autonomy, entire subsystems, proposal drafts, architecture discussions. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was clawing for space. I had it. But I won't lie, there were nights when I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if my parents ever thought about me. If my father regretted the way he dismissed me. If my mother ever reread my last email. I missed them, more the idea of them than the people themselves. I missed the way things were supposed to be, before I learned what I really meant to them. Still, I kept going. About 4 months into my time at Quantum Path, Marcus pulled me aside after a long team huddle. "NASA's putting out a request for proposals," he said, handing me a printed document. "They want a next-gen AI system to manage deep space mission logistics." I flipped through the pages. The scope was enormous: self-correcting algorithms for navigation, predictive failure analysis, environmental modeling, autonomous decision-making in scenarios where real-time communication with Earth wouldn't be possible. It was ambitious. It was thrilling. And it was my chance to really prove myself. "Quantum Path is planning to submit," Marcus said. "And I want you to lead the technical architecture." My pulse quickened. "Are you serious?" He nodded. "You've earned it. This needs someone who knows the tech and can sell it with confidence." I took the packet home and spent the next 3 nights poring over every line, outlining systems, brainstorming modular AI interactions, thinking about redundancy models and ethical considerations. I barely slept, living on coffee and trail mix and the thrill of finally getting to lead something that mattered. Then, just before the submission deadline, I saw the list of competing firms. And there it was, Heart Innovations. My stomach twisted. Brandon's name was on the bid documents. CTO, with Leonard still listed as CEO. They were offering a hybrid neural mapping architecture that looked rushed. Disconnected. Flashy, but with questionable scalability. I recognized bits and pieces of my old research embedded in their documentation, stuff Brandon had always claimed to clean up when I submitted internal memos. For a moment, I felt the rage rise. They were still using my work. Still trying to pass it off as theirs. But then I set it aside. I had my own design now. My own team. My own voice. And this time, it would be louder. The next 2 weeks were a haze of caffeine, whiteboards, and last-minute model training. I worked closely with Marcus and the rest of the team to fine-tune our proposal. Our system didn't just meet the requirements, it anticipated future needs. It was modular, scalable, and explained with clarity that even a room full of NASA executives could follow. On the day of the presentation, I wore my favorite gray blazer. The one I used to save for big meetings at heart. The difference? This time, it wasn't about proving I belonged. It was about showing what happens when you finally let the right person lead. I stepped into the NASA conference room, set my laptop down, and began. I don't remember every word, but I remember the feeling of watching the room lean in, not drift off. Of hearing murmurs of approval as I walked them through decision matrices and simulation models. Of seeing heads nod when I explained how our system would handle unpredictable variables in long-term isolation environments. And I remember the moment I saw my father and Brandon sitting in the back of the room. Leonard's face was unreadable. Brandon looked like he was trying not to sweat through his shirt. They said nothing as I wrapped up. No nod. No reaction. Just silence. But I didn't need their approval anymore. A week later, QuantumPath got the call, we'd won the contract. Our proposal had scored highest in both innovation and feasibility. NASA had chosen us, had chosen me, over Heart Innovations. I sat in the break room when Marcus announced it to the team. The room exploded with cheers. Champagne appeared from somewhere. Marcus raised a glass and said, "To the mind that outcoded everyone, including legacy." I smiled. Because this wasn't just a victory. It was justice. The celebration at QuantumPath was unforgettable. Our floor transformed into a party scene, confetti from a project manager's drawer, music from someone's playlist, a whiteboard scrawled with NASA contract equals OURS in neon markers. Everyone was buzzing. My teammates clinked glasses, hugged each other, and showered me with praise. Olivia this, Olivia that. For once, I wasn't in the shadow, I was the story. Marcus stood up on a chair, champagne in hand, and toasted, to Olivia, the woman who didn't just beat the odds, she beat legacy. The word lingered in the air, a knowing nod to the quiet war I hadn't told many people about. Some of my co-workers knew pieces. A few had guessed more. But no one besides Marcus truly knew the full weight of what I'd carried into that pitch. I smiled, raised my glass, and took it in. Not for vanity, but because I'd earned it. Every late night. Every bug fix. Every time I held my tongue in a room that didn't value me. I stood in that moment, not as Leonard Hart's daughter, not as the girl they said should focus on being a good wife, but as the woman who'd built something undeniably brilliant. But even as the music thumped and the laughter echoed, a chill crept up my spine. Because they were there. Leonard and Brandon had been sitting in that room. I saw them. They heard every word of my presentation. They knew it was me who'd built the winning architecture. And they left without saying a word. 2 days later, I found out just how much that silence had cost them. I was working from home, still in my hoodie, debugging a flight pattern visualization module, when I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I peeked through the window and froze. It was my father. He looked smaller than I remembered. Not in stature, Leonard Hart was still a tall man, but in presence. The arrogance that used to dominate every room he entered was gone, replaced by something more subdued. His suit was perfect, but his eyes looked tired. I opened the door slowly, keeping my posture neutral. "Olivia," he said. Just my name. Like he didn't know where to start. "I wasn't expecting you," I replied flatly. "I figured that," he said, clearing his throat. "Do you have a minute?" I hesitated but stepped aside. He walked in cautiously, like he wasn't sure he was allowed to. He stood in my living room, staring at the sketches on my whiteboard wall, simulation flowcharts, code logic trees, the raw mind of the system that beat him. "You built all this?" he asked. I nodded. "With my team. But yeah. The architecture's mine." He let out a low exhale. "I owe you an apology." I blinked. "I was wrong, Olivia," he said. "About everything. About you. About Brandon. About how I handled the company." Silence hung between us like a fog. I let bias dictate decisions that should have been based on merit. I saw my daughter, not my equal. And that was my failure. He wasn't crying, but his voice had the hollow tremor of someone who'd just come to terms with losing something irreplaceable. "I watched your presentation," he continued. "I knew, halfway through, that we'd lost the bid. I knew because I saw something we never had at Heart Innovations. Vision. Structure. Passion. You were in complete command of the room. Then why didn't you say anything?" I asked, folding my arms. He looked down. Pride. Stupidity. Maybe both. There was another pause. He reached into his coat and pulled out a sealed envelope. "I'd like you to come back. To Heart Innovations. As Chief Technology Officer." I blinked. "You're serious?" "I'm not offering it because you're my daughter. I'm offering it because we need someone who knows what the hell they're doing. And that's you." I stared at the envelope. It was the job I'd dreamed of for years. The title that had been dangled in front of me, then snatched away. And now, here it was, gift-wrapped and handed back, not as charity, but as admission. "Brandon?" I asked. "Still COO. He'll stay in operations. But the technical vision would be yours. Entirely." I walked over to the envelope but didn't touch it. "I'm proud of you, Olivia," he said quietly. "Not because you're my daughter. Because you beat us. And you were right." I looked him in the eye and said the one thing he never gave me. "Thank you." After he left, I sat on the couch, staring at that envelope. I should have felt triumph, but all I felt was conflict. The job was everything I thought I wanted. But I wasn't the same person who left Seattle. That woman would have taken the offer in a heartbeat. Now, I wasn't so sure. Later that night, I met Marcus for drinks. I told him everything. He sipped his whiskey and listened carefully. Then he said, "Sounds like the universe just offered you the crown you were denied." "Yeah," I said. "But I already built my own castle." He raised an eyebrow. "So what now?" I looked out at the Austin skyline, the city that had given me a second chance, and said, "I need to decide if it's worth reclaiming a past that almost broke me, or if I'm already standing exactly where I belong." I didn't sleep much that night. The CTO offer from Heart Innovations sat on my coffee table like a loaded weapon. The envelope was thick, detailed contract, stock options, relocation perks, all the things I used to fantasize about when I was grinding behind Brandon's spotlight. I'd opened it once, skimmed the executive salary figures and equity breakdown, then closed it like it might burn me. Because it wasn't just a job offer. It was everything I'd ever wanted, wrapped in everything I'd worked so hard to leave behind. Marcus noticed the change in me immediately. "You've been quiet," he said, catching me between meetings. "Still thinking about the offer?" Still pretending I'm not, I muttered, but yeah. You don't have to decide today. But that was the problem. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every quiet moment, every drive, every solo lunch was filled with warring thoughts. Part of me wanted to walk back into Heart Innovations and reshape the company from the inside out. To stand in that boardroom and lead, not as Leonard's daughter or Brandon's sister, but as CTO Olivia Hart, whose architecture outclassed them all. But the other part of me, the one that had fought tooth and nail for respect here in Austin, didn't want to give up Quantum Path. This place had given me a chance when I had nothing. I'd built something here that didn't depend on my last name. 2 days after my father's visit, I got a message from my mother. She wanted to meet. We met at a quiet cafe near the lake. She was already seated when I arrived, sipping tea and staring out the window. She looked older than I remembered. Softer, maybe. Or maybe I just never looked closely enough before. "Hi, Liv," she said gently. I sat down and didn't speak first. "I heard he visited," she said, her voice measured. "Offered you the CTO position." I nodded. "He did." She sighed. "He should have done it years ago." I told him. That caught me off guard. "You did?" She nodded, stirring her tea. "But he didn't listen. You know how he is. He thought he was protecting the company. But all he did was push away the one person who could have taken it somewhere new." I looked at her, unsure what to say. "You've always been the brilliant one, Olivia. I saw it every time you showed me your projects, every time you stayed up tweaking those silly robot arms in high school. But I didn't fight hard enough for you. And I'm sorry for that." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "I wasn't the wife who challenged him the way I should have," she said quietly. "I thought I was keeping the peace. But all I did was let him silence you." I took a deep breath. "Why now?" "Because I want you to know, whatever you decide, it's your choice. Not his. Not mine. Just yours." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Don't go back to prove something," she said. "Go back only if you believe in what you can build." When I got home, I finally allowed myself to imagine it. Not just the title, but the work. What I could actually do with that platform. Overhaul the bloated code base. Shift the culture. Build real mentorship programs for underrepresented engineers. Install systems that valued innovation over legacy. It wasn't just revenge anymore, it was vision. But I also imagined the friction. The politics. The proximity to Brandon, who hadn't said a word since the bid loss. The passive-aggressive resistance from executives who once applauded when I was sidelined. I wouldn't just be leading a team. I'd be fighting ghosts every day. That night, I got a Slack message from Marcus. "I know you're deep in thought. No pressure. But whenever you're ready, Quantum Path has got plans for another NASA bid. And we're thinking bigger. You in?" I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then typed without me really thinking. "Let's build the future." And that was it. I didn't send the envelope back. I didn't call my father. I didn't march into the Heart Innovations office with a triumphant speech. I just made a decision. I stayed. Because the truth was, I already had the crown. I'd earned it through skill, not inheritance. I was building something here. Something that didn't require me to drag the past along with me. But I did one last thing before I moved on. I sent Brandon an email. "Brandon, I hope this finds you well. I won't be accepting the CTO position. I found a place that values what I bring without needing to unlearn their biases. I suggest you start doing the same. Learn from this. Because next time we cross paths in a bid, I won't just beat you. I'll bury you." Best. Olivia. I never got a reply. Didn't need one. The next morning, I walked into Quantum Patha's office, grabbed a coffee, and dove back into the code that would shape humanity's next step into space.